Hi, everybody. Welcome to How's That Working For You?
Hi, Rebecca.
Bryan Robinson. I'm the shrink.
Oh, and I'm Monica Parker, and I'm Smarty Pants.
Are you sure?
No, not entirely. I was magically watching Rebecca.
She is the Smarty Pants. She's sassy in a sassy way, and she's also whip smart. You'll notice that in the podcast that we do. So today we're talking about fear and fearlessness. Now, I don't know what Rebecca's going to say. I'm going to introduce her, our guest, in just a minute. My belief is fear is a friend. It's not an enemy. But most of us don't like our fear and we try to push it away. So the key is to ask yourself as you're listening to our expert speak, do you have fear or does it have you?
Great question. But before we start, the mission of our podcast is for those who have a sense of how's that working for you? And for some, it is. And then again, for some, it does not. And that's because they keep making the same mistake over and over again. Repeat. Don't do that.
So our guest today is Dr. Rebecca Heiss, and she's a leadership and performance expert. And she's written a wonderful book that I have read called Instinct, which we'll find out a little bit more about later. Rebecca, welcome. It's great to see you.
Well, thank you. Thanks so much for having me on. I'm excited to be here and learn how that's working for you.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Maybe you'll show us.
Well, I do want to start with a question that I have a feeling a lot of people are going to want to know is, the times we're living in are so turbulent with war, threats of war, climate change, dangerous, massive killings.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us a little bit about how can we individually be fearless during these challenging times?
I want to take us back to better understand why we're not that way just inherently.
Great.
And it has to do with the way our brains evolved, right? Our brains are literally out there looking for all of the ways that we can die. What's going to kill us? Because, well, that's what mattered to our ancestors. You're here today because your great-great-great-great-great-great-grandparents were like always on the lookout for all of the negative stuff, which is why we have a negativity bias. So we're noticing for good reason. The wars, the famine, the climate change, the danger in the streets. There's a lot to be afraid of. And I don't want to be Pollyanna about it and be like, well, fear, please. You don't need to be afraid of anything. But at the same time, I think it's really important to recognize that's what your brain is biased for. But it doesn't mean that's the reality we live in. What did you notice today that was positive? I am coming to you from this incredible piece of technology through a camera lens and a microphone, right? We're miles apart. I just had a really lovely lunch with my loved ones. I'm getting together later with friends. I've got an incredible community. There's so much positivity around us that we ignore because our brains aren't built to notice that.
That's right. So if I have an uncertain situation looming and I don't know what it's going to be like, my first thought is going to be, oh my gosh, I'm going to fail or I'm going to make a mistake or they're not going to like me. That's that negativity bias that rushes in before that positivity. Is that right?
That's your brain's. I've actually named my brain's voice. It's like a little person up there. I'm like,
I love that.
All right, listen, I hear you. And I know it's your job to protect me. Thank you. I don't need you right now.
That's a great tool. That's a great tool. What do you name it like a name? Do you name your brain a name?
I'm sorry for any of you out there named Chad. The negative voice in my head is named Chad. And so when Chad goes off, I'm like, all right, Chad, I hear you. I know you're trying to protect me. Thank you. I don't need you right now.
What's really funny about this, Bryan knows this. I have named the two people who live in my head. One who is the compulsive neat freak, and she's Pearl. And then I have someone else who lives in chaos and who thrives on chaos, and that's Ethel. God love her. And so I understand when they come to play, and when I'm making the bed and it has to have hospital corners, I know who's in charge. It's Pearl. Anyway, so it's just interesting that you've got a Chad.
You know what? I don't have a name for mine, but I do talk to him.
Mm-hmm.
I talk to my different parts when I have that voice that says you can't do it, or you're going to mess up, or they're not going to like you. I say, you know what? I know you believe that, and that's okay for you to believe that, but I'm going to wait and see what happens.
That's it.
What do you think of that?
I think that's brilliant, because again, those voices are there for a reason. I think it's really important that your listeners all understand that this isn't schizophrenic behavior, right? We all have these parts of this, parts of us that this voice in my head is actually shared with all of us. And the reason for that, again, it's the way our brains evolved. You got rejected. You got kicked out of your tribe. You died. Right? Like that's a big deal. And so that fear of rejection, that fear of failing it looms large. And those voices are there going, don't do it. Don't do it. They're going to judge you. Because, social capital as a social species is extremely important. But today in the modern environment, listen, we get to choose our tribes. If I say something that upsets you, Bryan, and I really hope I don't, but if I do, you could be like, you know what? She's not part of my tribe.
Yeah.
There's so much about this. And before we go any further, do you think you could maybe explain a little bit about your book, Instinct? I think it would be really great for people to understand what that means, your evolutionary brain, et cetera.
The rewiring part.
Yes. Yeah. I would like to know.
Yeah, sure. So, my book as an evolutionary biologist and stress physiologist, my book is about the 7 instincts that I see playing out in modern environment in ways that don't help us. So, for example, our instinct to dislike or be afraid of people that look different, act different, sound different, behave different, have different political opinions, right? If you think of this in the time of our ancestors, we didn't run into people outside of our own tribe unless there was typically a conflict, right? And then the outsiders were coming to steal all of our resources and kill us. So that's dangerous. So today we carry this instinct with us, despite the fact that we live in a highly globalized society with people that we're interacting with all the time that have differences of opinion, that they look different, they act different, they speak differently. And none of that is threatening, but it causes a stress response for us. And it's so important that we recognize that so that we can change our behaviors consciously in the moment. So these are instincts that were helpful in our ancestral environment that hurt us today, that I think it's really important we have strategies to shape different behaviors.
Okay, I have a question. Maybe I have 2 questions. One is how one would teach that, because obviously we're living in a multicultural, many cities specifically are multicultural, and you're right, there's a lot of suspicion or discomfort because it's not you. Right. So I want to know how you deal with that, and then I have a question about the tiger.
Start. Good. Oh, I'm glad we're talking tigers. That's my favorite topic. I think empathy, it always begins and ends with empathy in my book. Trying to understand another person's perspective. Now, teaching how to understand another person is so challenging. So I use our biology to work with us rather than against us. And what I mean by that is if we have this negativity bias, if we have this need to fear something, good. Let's not, fear another race or another political affiliation. Let's fear something real. Let's fear something bigger. So the example that I use often is like, imagine we had an alien invasion, like extraterrestrial invasion, and they're not very kind. They're not looking to make peace with us. That immediately unites humanity, right? Like we're all like, oh, forget. I don't care what our differences were before. We have this imminent threat that, to be clear, I thought COVID might be that. I was like, here's the thing that brings us together. And unfortunately, it was politicized so quickly that we never had the opportunity to really come together as I think humans could. So one of the ways to teach coming together and to understand one another's differences is actually getting people together to do challenges to solve a clear common external enemy. Find another enemy that you can fight against together. Sports is a great analogy for that as well. I'm a big baseball fan. I go to every Red Sox game I can. And it doesn't matter who's around me. It doesn't matter their race, gender, age, weight, size. It matters that they're wearing the right logos. Because the second the Yankees take the field, we're all, boo. And immediately we've got a clear common enemy. So yeah, sometimes it's using those instincts to your advantage.
Deal with that if the very idea is that we have to open ourselves up to people we don't understand, which is, I think, what you're saying, including the Yankees, who we don't understand. So how do we, how does one teach people? I think that you can teach children, but how do you teach grown adults to stop living in fear of somebody you don't understand?
There's a lot of strategies. I think the biggest one is teaching curiosity. So it can be as simple as getting curious when you're in fear, because the cool thing about the way our brain evolved, right, is that curiosity and fear cannot coexist. There's literally no brain mechanism for it, because for 200,000 plus years, nobody had a tiger charging them and went, I wonder how fast the tiger is coming, right? We don't get curious when we're in fear. So when we feel this fear, this tension, this misunderstanding, the best thing we can do is start by asking a question. And then another question, and then another question. Because often what we'll find is the misunderstanding exists because we didn't fully understand the position. We didn't fully understand the history. So another strategy I like is the yes and. So if you've ever done improv before, you make a statement that I completely disagree with. And I say, nope. Well, that gets us nowhere, right? That just gets us in these conflicting corners. But if instead, and again, this relies on curiosity, I have to first fully accept your truth before I try and bring you into mine. That means I acknowledge you. I say, yes, okay, I understand that. And have you considered X, Y, and Z?
So, Rebecca, I know Monica has a question because she and I just got through speaking about it. And I have an answer, but I'm eager to hear yours. So tell her what.
Okay, so I totally get the tiger and not turning around and saying, how fast is the tiger coming? But if I'm out on a darkened street somewhere and I think there's a predator behind me, and I'm sure you've been asked this before, and I hear somebody dragging a leg walking behind me, I'm turning around to see how fast they're coming because I need to figure out what is my strategy for getting out of here. And I'm not curious. The question is, I am curious about how fast they're coming. So I'm asking, how does that equate with what you said about the tiger? I'm confused.
Good. So you're not in fear yet. That would be what I'm saying. You're not in fear yet. You're checking your certainty. You've got a little intuition, something's off. So that you're getting curious, which is a great strategy. Do I actually need to be in fear? Do I need to be having this stress response? You look behind you and you see, it's just a bat. It's a bat that's fluttered and everything's fine. And then your cognition can go back to everything's good and it resets your whole system. You turn around and you see somebody lumbering at you. Boom, you're then kicked into that fight, flight, freeze response. At that point, I promise you, you're not turning around again and going, I wonder if they're carrying a gun.
I get it. You have to be in full throttle fear.
Yes.
Is what you're saying. For the curiosity part to go, I don't care how tall he is or how anything. I need to.
The survival brain floods us.
Okay.
And so we don't care about curiosity. We just want to live. That's pretty much the answer I gave too, because I think that's pretty standard. I do want to say one thing though. I think there's some other C words that do not coexist with fear. Compassion. I'm curious to see if you agree or disagree. Compassion, clarity, curiosity, we've already said, confidence, courage, creativity, celebration. Those are a few. What do you think?
I think all of them are true. And cognition. You're not cognitive. You're not thinking any cognitive. Confidence. The confidence is the only one that tripped me up. Can you be fearful and have confidence? I think those two can coexist. Oh. So, I'm speaking off the tip here, so bear with me. I can be in full fear of something else, but still have confidence in my abilities. I think.
Or I could be in fear and think, oh my gosh, I can't do this. So I guess it could go either way.
Throwing that into complete disarray, I just want to ask this question. So I went to a wilderness camp in order to try and overcome my fears of things like heights and jumping off cliffs and making fires. And I did all of those things. I handled bears well. I learned how to swim where there could be snapping turtles. I don't know. I even jumped off a cliff. But then came the treetop walk, which terrified me, but I did it until I got on a platform where no one had said there was a zip line that had to go way down into the valley. Every part of me went into paralysis and I couldn't move. And now there are hordes of people who need to get on the platform, and they're not saying bad things to me, but they're thinking them. I mean, they're thinking, get this girl off this thing. She's a coward. Like, I can feel it. And so I don't know what to do. And I really didn't know what to do. And then I saw this guy who's a counselor at this wilderness camp with really blue eyes. And I said, could you come up here and flirt with me? So my word is an F word. And God love him.
It's not a C word.
He came up and he literally flirted with me and said, you can do this, babe. You're going to do this. And I, who am compulsive about not letting down a cute guy, took a zip line. So what's that?
Okay, I've got an answer here. And a couple points that I want to make. First of all, the fact that there's three things I want to say. The first is the freeze response that you had. I'm so glad that you described that, because so often when we talk about being in fear, we talk about fight or flight. But there's that other F, that freeze response. And freeze response is just as physiologically real as fight or flight. You literally can't move. And so that's A, very important. B, the reaction you had was then to compound that, which is often what we do under fear, is then you're looking around and you're like, oh, everybody's judging me. They weren't judging you. I can promise you, Monica, go back and ask some of those people. They were probably in states of empathy with you going, oh, I've been there in other situations. This is so hard. This poor woman, gosh, she must be experiencing a lot of emotion right now. And instead, what you're hearing is Chad up here going, they're all judging me. Oh, they're thinking poorly of me. You know, like, Chad, stop. This is not a moment we need you, right? And then the third thing is you decided, instead of allowing my survival instinct to kick in, I'm going to use the second most powerful instinct we have, which is sex.
Our producer took a poll. And I'm curious what you think of the results. The question was, what does the term fearless mean to you? Is it to be brave, careless, ambitious, or heroic? Now, that poll was to an audience from somewhere else. And here are the findings. 75% said fearless means to be brave. 25% said ambitious. 15% said heroic, and 10% said careless. What do you think?
I think I would have added one more choice to that. I think it would be recognizing fear and making a decision in the moment in spite of it. Because fearless is not the absence of fear, right? It's not being courageous. It's not being reckless or careless. It's fearing literally less. So it's recognizing the fear and then being cognitive about it. One of those C words that we talked about is and saying, is this actually a fear, or is this Chad up here going, you're not going to jump and everybody's judging you for it? Okay, well, I don't need to worry about that. And most of our fears today are this survival instinct going, this is, you can't ask for a discount. You can't sing out loud. Well, they're going to judge you.
So a lot of our fears are unfounded.
Or they're made by ourselves. They're they're chatter. It's what you said. I mean, that resonates with me. It's like that voice inside your head that has doubt, that doesn't trust yourself, that doesn't trust anybody else either. And so, but it's all noise, because you're not saying, I need to empower myself in this moment. Does that sound right? I need to find a way to let go.
And that, to me, is fearing less. It's not jumping into the cage of a hungry tiger. That's dumb, right? That's fearless. That's dumb. That's reckless. It's finding ways to fear less. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to go to a wilderness camp with you.
Let's go. Let's go.
I want to go too.
I'm thrilled that you used that secondary characteristic though, that sex character. You're like, hey, flirt with me. That's brilliant. That's brilliant.
It's just an old habit.
This is what I would call her smarty pants. Intuitive, intelligent. She knows all these tools that she uses. And from a psychological point of view, I say, oh my gosh, where did you learn that? And she said, I just do it. She's a smarty pants.
You know, I think that's there's something to be said there, because I think as much as I wrote about the instincts that we need to, change and shift, there's a lot of instincts we ignore. A lot of that intuition that is really there for good reason. And she's got it.
So I have a parting question. Any thoughts that you want to leave us with for our audience?
Yeah, I think my biggest thought to leave you all with is this. You are totally in charge. Now, big asterisks. You are totally in charge of the ride up here in your brain. There's so much out there that you cannot control. But you are like your own wizard. You're wearing those ruby slippers. You've been walking along this yellow brick road looking for a wizard that's going to change it all and make it magically better for you. When in reality, you've got the power to do all of this rewiring and finding those positive moments and finding fearless inside yourself. So it is a lot of responsibility, but it's also incredibly accessible in that we can all rewire our brains to see and hear and think better. So that's what I'll leave you with.
So we're all wearing ruby slippers, huh? You could see mine, I guess, under the table.
I love that. Oh, good. I love that.
Well, it's been great having you with us today.
Really?
We really appreciate you being here. Great message for everybody who's listening and watching. And we hope to see you again sometime.
Thank you, Rebecca. That was amazing.
Yes, thanks.
Brian, I think I learned something today.
Really? What?
Yeah.
You're the smarty pants.
Well, I think we have to be in charge of making decisions that take us from fear into doing. That's what I think.
Well, I think we can all be fearless if we have an intent to be fearless. And that's the takeaway, is what in your life can you be fearless about that will not kill you or harm you in any way. Everybody has something, so ask yourself that. We appreciate you being here with us today, and we hope
you will come and watch us on our YouTube channel.
Absolutely.
We want to see you there. Thank you so much.
Come back and see us again. Bye-bye.
Bye.